Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Listen, really glad to have you guys here. Now, today is the 28th of August. It's a Wednesday, and we're going to get the show started right away. So let's open up the charts right here, and let's take a look at what cryptocurrency is doing today. $252 billion market capital, 69% Bitcoin dominance, and we see this waterfall event occurred. Now, the last few days, I've been warning you guys that this was coming. Well, I think that when the real market slide hits, we've got the market is in a heady zone where they're like for years and years of money creation by the Fed. They're hoping for more. They're hoping for a lot more. And this market rally that we've had, if you can call it a rally, one day it falls 600 points and the next day it climbs 300 or whatever, This is all about hopes on what the Fed's going to do. Well, those hopes will not be gone disappointed. But there's crises coming. And the biggest crisis of all is probably the fact that I think that Boris Johnson is going to take the United Kingdom out of the European Union. And another big crisis is China's economy the numbers aren't in yet. When those numbers come in on what is happening in the Chinese economy, it could send the whole world into a tailspin. Along with Brexit, And there's Deutsche Bank. We forget about them. They're simmering in the back, just behind the curtain. Deutsche Bank is there, but they haven't fell yet. I think when the economic crisis comes, Deutsche Bank's going to fall. That's what I think. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, these shocks to the economic system that are coming in our very near future, I think, are going to affect Bitcoin. Bitcoin is obviously, we've seen what's happened with the gold and silver price as of recently. Bad news is good news for gold and silver. Now, for the stock market, not so much. The stock market's going to roll over on this bad news. It's going to fall. I think cryptocurrencies are going to fall some. What we're waiting for with cryptocurrencies is when the central banks change their monetary policy. So let's take a look at what happened with cryptocurrency today, and we see this. This is what I've been warning you guys about for several days now. But it's not over. We might get more. I'll tell you what. There's no shame in telling you guys when I'm going to be buying. I'm not buying yet. I think this price is going to go lower. And I think it could go lower. I don't think it's done yet. I think that when the market shocks come in the next couple months, and we're talking the Dow could lose like 30% or even 40% of its value, the central banks are going to step in. But the thing is the central banks are going to step in so quick, and that turning point is going to happen so fast. You got to have your Bitcoin before that turning point, because once you hit that turning point, then Bitcoin is going to take a rocket ship, and the stock market too. It's going to take a rocket ship back up again. Gold and silver are going to work good on this deflation that's here now because of the fear. They're buying it on a fear trade, and it's going to work even better after the central banks change monetary policy. So gold and silver, they're just beginning their bull run. Where you're going to have troubles is these asset bubbles are going to start popping around the world during this recession. And one of the biggest asset bubbles is in the bond market and in real estate. Those are two big, ginormous asset bubbles. Now, I saw today that Canada here, that the banks here in Canada are making record profits. It showed a picture, a couple people standing out in front of the bank at the teller machine, How are they making these record profits? What do they actually provide you? Are they selling anything? Where are these record profits coming from? Well, I'll tell you where they're coming from. These are record profits are coming in loans and stuff that they're making to people. When they make a loan to somebody, they create that money fresh, anew, as soon as they write it down in their book. People think, okay, I'm going to go into the bank and take out a loan. They'll go back into the vault and grab the $30,000 or whatever I borrowed and bring it out to me, that they already have that money. No, they don't. What they actually do is they just write in a book entry. They just write down $30,000. Now you owe them $30,000. All they did was write it down. I mean, or actually nowadays, just type it into a computer. They just type it into a computer. Instantly, that money springs into existence. It didn't exist before. This is where their record profits are coming from. But these loans that they're making out, making record profits, are coming on the back of an awful lot of it on home equity. It's made people rich here in Canada, home equity. The home prices have went up like, there was a time not very long ago you could buy a house for $50,000, $60,000. It went up to $2.5 million. A $50,000, $60,000 home went up to $2.5 million overnight. And of course the banks come along and say, hey, you know what? Your house is now valued at $2.5 million. We'll extend you a $1.5 million line of credit. At very low interest rates too. So the people say, oh, hey, we're rich. We got unlimited credit cards. We can go out and buy anything we want. We can buy swimming pools. We can buy motorhomes, whatever, right? This is where the record profits are coming from the banks. Because now those people owe that money back to the bank, and the bank's got it on their book. Hey, this is a record profit, record year. It can work in the opposite, just as bad on the other side of this. When the house prices go down, people, some of them are just going to walk away. Well, file bankruptcy and walk away. Then the bank is, even though they created that money from nothing, now once it's recorded on the bank's book, now the bank, if the people walk away and they're not going to pay, suddenly that's called a non-performing loan. Now the bank has to make good for that. Well, the bank cannot create money to make good for that non-performing loan. They can only create money when people borrow money. But these are the rules. According to Hoyle, just like when you read on the playing cards, they give you the rules of the game. The rules are the banks cannot just make money abstractly to pay off their debts. So then the bank all of a sudden has a giant hole in their books. What are they going to do? Well, there's only two things they can do. One's called a bail-in. That's when they take your money out of your account to pay for their bad loans. Or they can get the government to pay for it. Right? And when the government pays for it, that's called a bailout. So if they get the government to pay for it, right, what happens is the taxpayer ends up paying for it. So you end up paying for the bad loans. That's how it works. Anyway, figured I'd bring you guys up to date. So here in Canada, the banking system has so many of these all attached to the real estate industry. And when this real estate industry turns over and this bubble pops up here in Canada, the Canadian banks are suddenly going to find themselves with non-performing loans up the yin-yang. Up to here. Up to their nose. Non-performing loans. These banks here in Canada are tied into the banks in the United States. These are big banks here in Canada. And they're big banks in the United States. And they're all tied in together. If one bank sinks, it starts to pull all the other banks with it. Somebody come up with this grand idea of too big to fail idea where they'd link all the banks together with these derivatives products and everything else. So there was a time when if a bank sunk, picture banks like a ship on the ocean, And so one of the captains on board one of the ships, he says, I got a grand new idea. We have trouble with the ships sinking here in the harbor. So what we'll do is we'll put chains between all the ships together, so that way if none of us can sink, Because if one of us sinks, we all have to sink. That's what they did with the banks. Now they've linked them all together, like chained them together, so that if one bank sinks, it starts to pull all the other banks down with it. Oh, what a mess we're in. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble a little bit. Let me take a look at this. This is very interesting. Man claims he invented Bitcoin, is ordered to pay billions in Bitcoin. A man who has insisted that he is the man behind the pseudonym identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, has been ordered to pay half of his cryptocurrency bounty to a man believed to be his former colleague. A U.S. District Court ruled on Tuesday that Australian computer engineer Craig Wright, it's this guy right here, Craig Wright, must pay the estate of David Kleinman, who Wright suggested that was his partner before Kleinman died in 2013. According to The Guardian, the Florida judge ordered Wright to pay half of the Bitcoin he earned between 2009 and 2013, and half of the intellectual property he owned at the time of Kleinman's death. The price of the Bitcoin is in constant flux, but as of today, the real Satoshi Nakamoto holdings would be worth about $10.45 billion, meaning Craig Wright has been ordered to hand over more than $5 billion worth of cryptocurrency. Oh, I just had to put this one on here. I just love this story. China's central bank is ready to launch cryptocurrency. This is a very important development. I've been talking about the central banks going in and becoming replacing the fiat currencies with a cryptographic version of their fiat currencies. China's doing it, and they're doing it fast. China's central bank is set to launch a state-backed cryptocurrency and hand it out to several major institutions in the country. According to Forbes, the plan is for those institutions, the commercial banks of China, and tech juggernauts, Alibaba and Tencent, among them, to help distribute the cryptocurrency into the country's economy. The news comes after China has been actively cracking down on cryptocurrencies. Yeah, but see, they're cracking down on cryptocurrencies, but this is their baby, and they're not going to crack down on it, they're going to push it. Well, if China's doing this, watch all the other countries follow suit. Just watch these other central banks. This is going to happen so fast. And it's in a bid to outrun or outstrip Bitcoin. I'm going to tell you what, they're not going to. The people know the difference. The people know that these cryptocurrencies by the central bank are nothing more than a digitalized version of fiat. In fact, this is going to help Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies because it's going to get people used to using cryptocurrencies rather than real physical paper money, which is what they've been used to. It's going to bring about the end of cash, but it's also going to push Bitcoin. I'm going to tell you what, we're going into this little market decline in Bitcoin. I don't think it's going to last real long, just a few months. On the other side of this, I think it's going to be Bitcoin to the moon. Once these central banks start dabbling in cryptocurrency themselves, and they create a feeling amongst the people of not only ability to use cryptocurrencies, but also a feeling amongst the people that they're being controlled, and the decentralized cryptocurrencies are going to offer them a feeling of freedom. This game is going to change in the next few months. Ultimately, in the end, I think Bitcoin's going to win, and that's what I think is going to happen. Anyway, now it says, now central banks are making the case for a crypto revolution. Back in 2014, most of the world's central bankers were warning people of the risks of using cryptocurrency. Some remain skeptical to this day. The Reserve Bank of India in particular has a very high and tough stance on crypto, but many others are now apparently on board with the crypto revolution. Last week, at the Economic Policy Symposium in Jackson Hole, Bank of England's Governor Mark Carney suggested that a digital currency developed by a coalition of several central banks could possibly replace the United States dollar as the world reserve currency. That's huge! It's huge! And we're not talking about, nobody talking about this. We're talking about the Bank of England's governor, Mark Carney. It's huge. We're moving so fast. Things are happening so fast. It's hard for me to keep up with it all. You know, I'm doing my best, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Give me a thumbs up. And I'll have a hurricane report on probably tomorrow afternoon on the new developing hurricane. I think it's going to be a bad one, guys. I really do. As it approaches the coast of Florida, I think it's going to really spin up. And I think we're looking at something in excess of probably 100-mile-an-hour wind speeds. So, anyway, stay tuned. We'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.